Thank you for joining us again and welcome back to our channel. If you are joining for the first time, we appreciate your time as always. Listen, folks, there is a geopolitical hypocrisy that needs to be called out. I'm talking about the country of Italy. If you've been following our channel, we look at big topics here and from the geostrategic point of view on how Africa engage its strategic partners from around the world. The country of Italy is claiming that it wants to invest billions of US dollars or euros to the continent of Africa. There are a number of things involved here. This is the problem that the continent of Africa must wake up and open its eyes when dealing with partners from across the world. In this particular situation, Italy, that has called France all kinds of names, and at the moment is claiming that it wants to invest in the continent of Africa. First of all, there are a number of things involved here. First, Italy wants to curb immigration. According to the Italian government, Prime Minister, they think that by investing in Africa, which it is their own interest, in this case, not to curb immigration, the amount of billions that they are talking about, this is a fraction of what the continent needs. And I think going ahead saying that investing that amount of money will stop immigration, I think this is a wrong notion on why Africa's geopolitical partners do not understand the concept about immigration. Governments don't stop people to travel. Immigration, people moving to different countries, is on individual basis. It's individual aspiration. It's the drive. They want to see the world. They want to see new things. So for the Italian administration to think that by providing the funds, but make no mistake, Italy didn't want to do it alone. They brought the European partners on board, the European Union I'm talking about, and then there is Italy's own interest, investment interest in the continent of Africa. But they have attempted to be curbing immigration, improving investment in Africa. But the bottom line is Italy's own interest, not about curbing immigration. I think this particular move should be observed very closely in the continent of Africa. Experts have questioned this particular move. If actually Italy's initiative is a proper investment strategy, or they are trying to safeguard or put money into their own investment to acquire other assets, minerals, resources. So if Italy on one hand is accusing France of being a hegemonic power, a paternalistic behavior in the continent of Africa, and at the moment it thinks that by putting immigration in front, that I'm investing as a result to curb immigration, I think that's fundamentally wrong on how these partners perceive the continent of Africa. This investment that a number of countries across the region previously rely on their European partners who have failed them over and over in terms of their strategic contribution, not talking about climate change, a whole lot of desertification across the continent of Africa. Looking at Paris, billions of US dollars refused to be given so far, but they still come up with these initiatives, which Italy in this case never wanted to go alone, like I said earlier. They brought the European Union on board to make it look very official, and then to go to the Mater funds. I have important videos to play. You're going to listen to how experts want to put it into context. But I think it is a wrong move by the country of Italy to think that by investing money which is meant for Italy's own interest will create the amount of jobs that will limit immigration or immigrants coming to Italy or to other countries, to the European Union. It's fundamentally wrong. Let me say this. European population is declining. According to data, Europe will need to also work alongside other countries around the world, including the continent of Africa, to attract skilled migrants.
We begin in Rome, where Italy and the European Union have announced 1.2 billion euros in investment for Africa as part of an ambitious development plan. Italy's Giorgia Meloni also promoted her government's Mattei plan, which proposes to invest some 5.5 billion euros in Africa to address the root causes of mass migration. EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen hailed it as a common effort alongside Europe's Global Gateway Investment Plan. Clémence Foller tells us all about it.
Investing in Africa to stop illegal immigration to Italy. This is Giorgia Meloni's ambition. On Friday, the Italian Prime Minister gathered African leaders, European representatives and economic decision-makers in Rome to discuss her plan. She believes boosting African economies will remove the African migrants' desire to come to Europe. Her project is dubbed the Mattei Plan after Enrico Mattei, founder of ENI, the Italian petrol giant that is very active in Africa.
Strengthening Africa means strengthening Europe as well, building together the conditions for common stability. These are not initiatives dropped from above. These are concrete projects that were born out of dialogue, that were born out of a desire to create lasting development together with our African partners.
So the goal here, is it about stopping unskilled migrants coming to Italy and other European countries? Or is it about basically ignoring the aspect that Europe will need people to come and work in their manufacturing sectors and their technological sectors, because a number of these jobs are not moving to the continent of Africa anytime soon. So this approach by the country of Italy is fundamentally wrong. It is an approach which is based on three factors. First, they aim to curb immigration, which is never going to work because the amount of billions they are talking about is a drop in the ocean on what a pauper nation can invest in the continent of Africa. And to be frank, Italy alone cannot do it. The administration moved ahead to bring the European Union officials to make it look very official. And you see the African officials are just receiving the promises there as if it's something that's going to work. African nations have been disappointed over and over in the past, like I said. So this initiative by Italy is not going to move the ball. It won't move the needle at all.
According to the Italian press, Rome will mobilize 5.5 billion euros to invest in various economic sectors on the continent. The Mattei plan covers 14 countries and investments will target raw materials and energy as well as education. The Italian plan is part of the European Union's Global Gateway strategy.
The alignment of the Mattei plan and the Global Gateway with the African Union Agenda 20, the promotion of trade corridors such as the Lopito Corridor, will enable our member countries to boost intra-African trade.
However, some experts say that Italy has promised too much by implying that these investments could reduce the number of migrants by creating jobs and growth. There are also concerns from NGOs such as Recommon that the Mattei plan will serve the interests of Italian fossil fuel giants rather than the producers.
So, for Italy to feel that by making this gigantic announcement, it is something that will move the continent of Africa, it's fundamentally wrong. The basics in terms of the analysis, like you've heard from the officials and the journalists, it's about Italy's own interest. So I think it's a hypocritical investment that is perceived to be modeled through a way of looking at if immigration is the problem that they want to help Africans to solve. That's never going to solve or move the needle at all. Africa, the bottom line is clear. These initiatives like countries, Italy, coming and talking about its investment, is an indication to you that the borders are closed, that you are not welcome to an extent. It's pretty clear. That's just what the message they are sending to you, but you still fail to get the message.
Clémence Foller with that report. Well, let's talk more about this now. We're now joined by Giovanni Marco Carboni, a professor at the University of Milan and head of the Africa program at the Italian Institute for International Political Studies. Thanks very much for joining us this evening. A pleasure to have you along. If we could just begin with your main takeaways from the announcement of the EU and Italy's 1.2 billion euros in investment.
Well, it's in line with Giorgia Meloni's objective of having the EU on board. in terms of her own proposal for the Mattei Plan, which was launched some 18 months ago. From the very beginning, the idea was that Italy could not go alone, that the EU had to be part of it, that there must be synergies between the two. And the EU and its top leadership gave support to the Mattei Plan from the very beginning at the Italy-Africa summit in January 2024. And this is somewhat a follow-up to that.
Talk to us a little bit about the figures involved here. 1.2 billion euros from this announcement today. I believe the Mattei plan, we're talking about 5.5 billion euros. The European Union also with much bigger plans for this longer plan ahead. What's your opinion on how much we're talking here? Is it enough?
It's not. That's one of the problems with the Mattei plan, which has some merits, but the very idea that you can alter the developmental trajectory of African countries by putting on the table money like the 5.5 billion euros by Italy or this new amount announced today, it's out of scale. You can simply not do that with that amount of money. Of course, there's also the global gateway part of the European Union commitment to Africa, which is much more substantial. But there are also doubts as to the extent to which the 150 billion euros that has been promised 2-3 years ago by the European Union is actually being mobilized.
You must invest in the African Continental Free Trade Area. You guys are not really looking at the bottom line. Recently, the European Union has passed a law that they will punish companies, organizations that are European-based, operating in emerging countries, I'm talking about the continent of Africa in this case, who do business with Russia or who do not meet certain standards in terms of their particular regulation in the continent of Europe, and that certain European buyers can only purchase products from companies that meet certain standards. Now tell me how many African nations or businesses will produce products that will meet those strict regulatory standards that the European Union is looking for. It's just a way to kick out the continent of African-owned farmers from the competition. Very few will meet this particular requirement that the continent of Europe is asking. So this double standard and hypocritical approach that on one hand we are setting very high standard for African farmers, on the other hand we need immigrants to come to Europe, skilled immigrants to work and help build Europe's economy and support. On the other hand, we are claiming that we are investing in Africa to stop immigration.
And with that in mind, the African Union has warned that the continent cannot rely solely on promises, which are often broken. And critics also questioning Italy's priorities here as well, saying it's framed its plan as a partnership, but some say it clearly favours Italy's interest, notably on migration and securing energy supplies.
It does. I mean, energy supplies and managing migration are the two main goals for Italy. And I think our Prime Minister has been pretty open about it. From the very beginning, the language she used was the need to guarantee the right not to be forced to migrate to African youth. So that was from the very beginning. It was not hidden. And energy also has been dealt with pretty openly. And the very idea behind Meloni's strategy approach is to be as frank and as open as possible in dealing with African countries. Of course, this is the rhetoric, the communication, the approach that is used. Will need more time to see how things develop, because 18 months since the beginning, the launch of the plan, is really a short time period.
We're running a little short of time, but I would like to get your view on one other quick question. Meloni speaking on from speaking about moving on from paternalism. This is a reference we pretty clearly assume to France and its post-colonial politics. We've recently seen many countries turn their back on France. Are they perhaps more open to Italy's overtures?
I think they are to some extent, there is a feeling that we are not perceived in the way some other European partners are perceived in parts of Africa, and that this might be an advantage. But I think that the overall problem of some anti-Western and anti-European resentment that we have seen surfacing in different areas in the continent is there. And Italy will have to face that. And one of the key issues is the one that you mentioned before, is do not make promises that you're not going to maintain. And that's another key concern that we must have in observing how the Mattei plan unfolds.
Okay, Giovanni, plenty more we could continue talking about. Unfortunately, we're right out of time. Giovanni Marco Carbonde from the University of Milan. Thanks for your time.
Of which, like I said, immigration is not government stopping immigration. This is the fundamental mistake. It is individuals' own aspiration. People want to see the world. People want to travel. These investments they are talking about are not investments that directly impact the community. This investment does not directly impact new graduates from universities or create jobs that in the next couple of months or years can start seeing some ripple positive effect. So the Prime Minister of Italy's own initiative, I think, is just throwing water on the duck's back. Nothing is going to happen. So African countries must wake up and start looking at things and putting things into context, because their geostrategic partners understand that African nations do not look at things into context. By just throwing the figures out there, billions of dollars to be invested in Africa, as if it's going to happen all overnight, of which Africans have been deceived over and over, looking at the climate fund, Paris, Glasgow, the UAE, looking at Azerbaijan. The money is not coming. So these flashy figures that are being put out there to humanize or to make the African countries feel as if Italy has arrived, I think is fundamentally wrong. It's a top topic. Italy is looking for its own interest in the continent of Africa at the moment, after it has lambasted France back and forth. So this investment, portraying it as a Hail Mary coming to solve immigration in Africa, to reduce the problems and not allowing people to travel abroad, is absolutely wrong. If we start packaging things in this manner, for which we know that the European partners know fully well that is to invest and gain raw materials, oil and gas, whatever they want, because this is aligned with the Martel and talking about any. And if you listen to what these experts are saying, that's what is on the bottom line of this particular investment. So Africa should not fall for this particular so-called investment. It's simple. Expert can put it into context. It is interesting how Italy can go behind immigration and put forward its own interest, and thinking that by saying that immigration is the drive or the goal here, will resolve Africa's own perspective in terms of how Africa will perceive European nations or perceive Italy. As you heard, the expert was talking about Italy is perceived differently in the continent of Africa. That is not the goal. The goal is Africa needs proper investment, honest investment that yield results. So for Italy to come on one hand claiming that it is investing billions to solve the immigration problem, on one hand brings the European Union on board, of which it's about Italy's own investment goals it wants to accomplish in the continent of Africa, I think that's fundamentally hypocritical. Let me know in the comments section what you think with regards to this particular move by the country of Italy. and why such hypocritical investment should be called out. And I think Italy can do better than thinking that African will fall for this particular move that Italy is taking. That's why experts are questioning it, if it is a proper and real investment that the continent of Africa needs at this time. Let me know in the comment section your particular perspective on regards to the reason why Italy feels that after lambasting the country of France, it wants to take an initiative. I will be looking forward to meeting you soon in our next episode. Have a good day. Bye-bye.